Hi, good evening, home language, FETs and SPs. It is the 23rd of August and it's about 16 minutes past 6 now. September's on its way and we're nearly in the spring equinox where we're going to have equal days and equal nights, and we got days already getting longer, early sunrises, later sunsets. I can just see outside the window, the sun is just setting. Quite dark already. I put jersey on because I've got a bit cold. So good evening to you all, and I'm starting a bit earlier this week so you can possibly use some of this material for your assignment 1. I hope you've all seen that assignment 1 material has been uploaded with the assignments, especially the video recording from yesterday, looking at the full main parts of your assignment 1. There's also a note on structures and giving you more information. So if you're still confused, and you've read the note and you've looked at the I think it was the week 2 learning event where I discussed the, I think a lot of you were confused with that, where I discussed the assignment 1, then you can get back to me and tell me exactly what you don't understand. Okay, but hopefully it's going fine. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you now. There we go, slide share. Yes, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, we're on week 3. We can look at English resources for grammar teaching, and we're getting on. Soon it'll be week 12, and this will be all a distant memory. Okay. Yes, I know some of you don't like this, but I'm just trying to keep a tab on what's actually happening. For home language, we've got 77 FETs that have now registered and 115 SPs. For week 1's online tracking, 60 FETs have done it. So you've got a black mark, very good. And the SPs, 90 of the 115. So most of you have done the online tracking. If any of you are late registrations and haven't been able to get to it, please let me know so I can actually just delay or add on the submission date for you. Okay, as you can see, week 2's will be due on the 29th. And there's a forum for week 3, which is going to be the 5th of September, and I will discuss that tonight as well. Okay, so unit 1, we've looked at the importance of teaching language structure and use and the whole problem with error in grammar. Then we looked in week 2 at integrated grammar teaching strategies. There were quite a few of those. Are you confused by grammar? Maybe you are. And tonight we're actually looking at the resources that you can use to make your grammar teaching more communicative and authentic and context related. Okay, yes, English teacher resources and ideas. Hoping I'm going to give you a few of these tonight, and then next week we'll be doing the final part of grammar, which is unit 1, and looking at assessment, which will also be important for assignment 1 as well as for assignment 3. Okay, and that's all in our dear friend Barrera chapter 13. So resources for CLT lessons. Yes, there's no real format for CLT lessons. There's no textbook that you need. Any material that is authentic and that's relevant is fine. It could be an email, it could be a brochure, it could be a video, it could be a textbook, it could be a newspaper article, it could be an invitation. All these things can be used for CLT practices. It could be a dialogue, a play, and so on. The underlying principle for this is that you have to use language to learn and to communicate in the target language. So the whole idea of CLT is that you're going to use the language actively in meaningful and authentic situations to learn and to communicate to somebody else. They must talk. The students will have to talk to each other. They'll have to make a noise sometimes, maybe as well. There we go. All the things we do to communicate. Subject matter must be authentic and relevant to your students. So it must be issues relating to their home backgrounds, what's important to them, what they fear, what they love, what sports they like. These are things that are relevant. So it might be like bullying as our social context, our social issue, and they would be interested in that. What about education? What about employment? What about poverty? All those things are authentic, they're real, they're local, and students can relate to them. So for teaching grammar, what your teachers do, they should give the students meaningful input that's relevant information that is in context, all right? So it could be the context, could be, comprehension, it could be in an email, it could be in a brochure, it could be in an advertisement, it could be in a picture. All these things are meaningful to teach that grammar instruction. And then you're going to give them opportunities to use the grammar. This is the most important part, that it's going to be applied and practiced. So it's not just going to be you telling them what the verb is. You're going to give them opportunities to practice it and work together in groups, to collaborate and to use it in different situations, that actual structure. Relate your grammar instruction to real life situations. Use newspaper reports, magazine articles, videos, texts that you've got, sweet papers, boxes, anything that you've got that's got real life situations on it. Okay, or is your classroom like this? There's no goal, you don't know where you're going, and the teacher's teaching. That's what I feel like I'm doing a lot of the time. I'm teaching and no one really understands what I'm saying. That's why I did the whole assignment again for you, the overview. So hopefully it's a bit more meaningful to you now. So the learner says, what am I learning in the end of your lesson? And the teacher might be saying, what are we teaching? I mean, you might not even know what you're teaching, and everybody's confused in this whole lesson. So this, hopefully we are steering away from that kind of situation. So let's just quickly look again at CLT principles again. Let's refresh them. Richards and Rogers in 2001 said it must be communicative. That means there must be reason to communicate. That means there must be like interviewing or asking questions or finding out information. It could be having discussions. It could be problem solving together. It's going to be related to a task. So it could be that you are doing a survey of some kind of research and you have to go and interview other people about what is going on. So this is communicative and is related to your task. It's not isolated and it's meaningful. It's relevant to you. Maybe you want to go and find out how many people have been bullied in the class, and you might do a little questionnaire. You'll go and ask different people questions, and then you're going to come back and you're going to write a report about that. That's using the bully issue. It could be substance abuse. There are so many social issues: poverty, hunger, broken families, gender-based violence, all kinds of challenges that we are facing in this world. Okay, so language learning requires something that is active. Yes, they've got to speak. Meaning making. There's got to be collaboration between students. They're going to have to problem solve different issues. They're going to have to be critical about the reading, because remember, reading can be very biased, manipulative, negative, positive. How do you actually judge it? What is fact? What is opinion in it? Purposeful writing. What am I? A real writing task that I'm writing a letter to complain about my marks, and how do I structure it? That's a real issue. What about writing an email inviting someone to come and address your sports team? What about interview questions? What about creating a CV? All these things are purposeful. Responding to authentic material, letter to the editor. What would you say about an issue? How would you respond to somebody inviting you to come and visit them? How would you respond to someone thanking you for a gift? All these kinds of things. What about text messages? And then also higher order cognitive skills, not only the remembering and understanding, but also the creating, the synthesizing, the evaluating, the analyzing, the contrasting, the comparing. These are all higher order cognitive tasks that they need to do. So learner-centered tasks are learner-centered, not teacher-centered. They must be meaningful to the learners. They must be contextualized in what you're studying and not taught in isolation. They mustn't say, identify a verb in this paragraph. Why? You can ask what verbs have been used and what meaning they add to the paragraph. That's good. Why did he use that adjective to describe the situation? That's meaningful and it's not in isolation. So in your class activities, you're also going to have the independent and individual work. That's very important. Also, you're going to have pair and group work. Information gap type activities, so they've got to fill in what's missing in a sentence to complete it, to make it more meaningful. And also research-driven projects are fabulous there, with all kinds of surveys and questions, finding out more about COVID, vaccinating, and then coming and writing a little report about that. Finding out about different people, different lands, or research type projects. Okay, this is quite interesting, this little slide. telling you what we remember and when we learn. So if you've got a lecture, like I'm doing now, it's 5% you will remember. If you're reading something like the assignment 1 reading note, it might be 10% you might be remembering. Audio visual, something like this, that you're listening and you're seeing, you might remember 20%. What about demonstration? 30%, right? But the real rich learning happens when you are discussing things. 50% is retained if you practice it. And this is why it's so important, not just to understand something, but to practice it. 75% will be retained. And then teaching others, 90%. So if you get your learners to actually teach others and help others while they're practicing, they will retain 90%. So this is what we have. We have passive teaching, which is the lecturing, the reading, which is we do most of the time, demonstrating, and then we have the participatory type teaching methods, which are the richer methods where we allow discussion, we allow practice, we help our students to teach others. Okay, and this is the repetition here. Lecture 5%, right at the top, going right down to the bottom, teaching others. That's the richest kind of learning retention we can have if we apply this pyramid. So think about next time you're talking, and apply that to myself, 5% will be remembered. Okay, this is resources for CLT lessons. They must be real life. That's why topics from the internet, latest news reports from News 24 are all great because they rely on communication. Students can talk about them. It's not isolated like this little cartoon where they're learning about English interrogative constructions. That's interrogating what, where, why. And she starts it off by putting her glasses on. There you go, with my glasses on. I think there's lights in it. The auxiliary verb, which normally appears after the subject. What is an auxiliary verb? Do you know? Is, are, were, was, am. Okay. Which is normally after the subject. He is, man was, right? House is. Must move to sentence initial position. Now, what exactly does that mean? I don't know. And the poor little learner in the front row says, what's a verb? And I think that's many of our students are like, they don't actually even know what that verb is. Okay, what is a verb in a sentence? We don't teach like that. That's isolated. We should follow rather the 4 C's of curriculum design. Content is so important, relevant, meaningful, communication, that we're going to use it, we're going to chat about, we're going to interact. Cognition, we're using the higher level cognition levels, and we're also cognizant of culture in our class. Do our students like sitting together, boys and girls mixed, or do they like sitting separately? And we respect that in the classroom. How do they like to answer questions? How do they make eye contact? How do they not make eye contact? How do they stand? How do they sit? We've all got to be aware of culture and how we can be respectful of everyone's culture within the class. How do we respect food cultures, dress cultures, and things like that? These are so important when we are teaching others. How are we respectful of them and of ourselves as well? Okay, but communication is the key to how they get things going. And we don't just do it with just reading, isolated reading, listening, or speaking or writing. We do it all together. They're all integrated. So when there's reading, there will be speaking. When there's listening, there will be writing. And they all come together to promote fluency. There we go. So from the listening, plus the speaking, plus the reading, plus the writing gives us total fluency. And that's how we acquire the language. So I'm going to go through about 5 different examples and then some games at the end. This one is how do we learn adjectives, those of you that love grammar type lessons. First of all, you've got to have some kind of prior knowledge. And prior knowledge in India is that you must know what a common noun is, and you must know what a proper noun is. And I'm sure you all know what those are. And you would have taught your students this in another lesson, so they know exactly what a proper and maybe with an abstract noun and a common noun. So you say to your learners, please bring an interesting photograph or picture to class. Otherwise, they could have it on their phones, or you could have a whole pile of magazines or newspapers in your class and they can find an interesting picture. But these are some that I've just downloaded, and this is an interesting elephant picture with him resting his trunk on the car, interestingly captured. Yes, we call COVID picture, taking temperatures, which become our new normal, things that we do without even thinking anymore. And what about the lockdowns, curfews, stay at home, don't socialize? Those are all part of our new normal as well, and we just take them for granted. What about queuing? Yesterday at Spa, we were told to all move away from each other because they said we were not giving everybody their social distancing time. So they moved us all apart. So we weren't too close to each other. This queue seems pretty much packed. Look at the characters in it. This person might have brought this to class, and now how are we going to discuss it? So the first thing you're going to do, you're going into pairs, and then you're going to write 5 interesting sentences about this scenario. Maybe you could take each of the characters in the queue and say something about them. Okay, my eye falls on the man in the middle. That seems quite exhausted. Then you underline all the nouns in your sentences. The man in the queue is leaning on his trolley. Okay, so you've got man, you've got queue, and you've got trolley. Then you're going to insert an adjective with all your nouns. So the tired man is leaning on his gray trolley. Okay, I've got all the adjectives in. The tired man is leaning on his gray trolley in the long queue. Okay, there we go. Then you do not underline the adjectives, and what you're going to do is you're going to exchange your 5 little sentences with your adjectives inserted with somebody in the class, another group. Then they're going to go through it and they will underline adjectives that you've put there, and then they return it to you. Then you'll check what they've done, and then you'll discuss it or maybe read it with the class. The class might give you ideas on how to improve. Don't say tired man, say exhausted man. Don't say trolley, say wobbly trolley. So you try and make your adjectives more descriptive as well. And then independently, they will write their own paragraph using their own picture, and they will also highlight the adjectives. Brings us back to our topic. So they will rewrite their own little story about the picture that they have brought. Quite a nice exercise, I think. This is sentence structures, and this goes around the movie The Life of Pi, which was a book. What you can do is you can take, this is all from the actual description, the narrative of the actual film. P was on board a ship with his family. They were going to immigrate from India to Montreal in Canada, and they had a zoo and they put animals on the ship as they were leaving India, and there was a terrible storm. All the family died except in P Patel, and the Bengal tiger called Richard Parker are the only ones survived, and the movie's about how they had to get to know each other, trust each other, and live together. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and cut all these little sentences up, okay, and put them in an envelope. You can have different sections for different groups. And then in the groups, they've got to try and rearrange the sentences into meaningful discourse. So they've actually got to rearrange them, beginning with the sentence in bold, which might be the ship sank. And then they have to put it together. It might not be exactly the same as what you're seeing here, but they will be forced to make it coherent. So it must be meaningful. And you can see there's also direct speech there, which they can actually put in quite nicely into their little construction using sentences. There they are. Bengal tiger is in the boat, and P is trying to make friends with him. Here's another section. You do the same for another group, and they do the same thing. And so what you can do is do the same with poems, dialogues, prose, interviews, comic strips, which is quite interesting. And you can ask them to rearrange it according to how they think it makes meaning, and this is how they can see how sentence structures must be meaningful and coherent. Okay, now what about example 3 is making predictions. And this is using movie posters, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, how many you want. You put them up on the wall for a few days ahead. You print out copies of the movie reviews, and you leave the students to look through them for a couple of days. Here you've got The Great Gatsby. There you've got The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn. And here we've got 007, Skyfall with Daniel Craig. Okay. Then the activity worksheet 1, that they go around individually and study each of the posters, then write sentences on what appeals to them and what doesn't appeal to them in the advertisement or the review. Then they select a poster that really appeals to them and they say why. So that's all part of worksheet 1. Then they get into group work and they move on to movie reviews. Here they're working as 3s. They try and decide what genre each of the movie belongs to. Is it comedy? Is it action? Is it I'm just trying to think whether it's horror, science fiction. What kind of movie does it belong to? and what visual details suggests that it will be this kind of movie. And if you look at the Daniel Craig, the Skyfall, obviously it's going to be action with him lying on his back, pointing his revolver up. All Sean Connery and James Bond pictures are all action based. What about Breaking Dawn? With you look at the black garments that they're wearing, the ghoul-like faces, the witches and the mist around them, the dancing circle there. To me, it might be look a bit like horror, that kind of movie, but you can see that from the actual poster. And then this might be a period piece with the 50s, 40s outfits that they're all wearing, typical of that era. And that is the Great Gatsby, the hairstyles, makeup, and so on. Then they'll discuss their in their groups. They did this individually. They worksheet 1, what appealed to them in their groups, what they liked, what they didn't like, which one they would choose to see. So they'll discuss that amongst each other. And then they start moving on to predictions in their groups. What was the movie about, do you think? Why do you think this movie is about action? Why do you think this movie is about a period piece, a classic? Which movie would you like to watch? Why? Okay, in your groups you discuss that. Then you move on to your movie reviews, and then you've got your reviews of each of the movies. And you'll say, what did the reviewer favor in the movie? Which one did the reviewer like? Which one did he not favor or she not favor? Which one were they neutral with, and why was that? And if you look at the first one, which is a Twilight Saga, and it starts off by saying what parents need to know. Okay, so what do you think? Does the reviewer favor it or not favor it, and why? And if they think what parents need to know, it might be important to see what they've said in it. And if you think about, if you've read any of the Breaking Dawn and the Twilight Sagas, you'll agree with this, that there's a climatic battle in it, and several of the characters are tortured violently, they are beheaded, they are burned, they're ripped apart by werewolves, there's shocking deaths, a lot of gore. So you might think, well, I definitely don't want my kids to see this if it's such a violent movie. They also speak about the sensuous love scene with close-ups of bare skin and faces, a glimpse of the breast, several passionate kisses. You might think, oh, no, this is not for my child. Definitely not. Let them go and watch that movie. The next one is The Great Gatsby. And this reviewer really liked Nick. And that's Leonardo DiCaprio and has his character as Nick. And he says he's never met a man like this. And he said Leonardo portrayed Nick in such a fantastic way, and you'd really go and see the movie again just to see how this character unfolded. Doesn't have much to say about Daisy. You cherish characters like Gatsby in my mind forever. And then he says, however, he said his future revolved around the wrong thing. Okay, that's Daisy. She depicts the most shallow, useless woman. One should never keep a human a goal. One should never keep a human a goal. Doesn't make sense to me, because they are the most confused people. So obviously loved Nick, and we're going to see the movie again just to see him, but didn't like Daisy at all. And then the last one, the Skyfall, which he says is sky high. So obviously that favors the movie as well. And he goes on to say that this is the best Bond since Sean Connery, starring Daniel Craig. His other 2 movies with James Bond were not great, but this one he really rated high. And so really going and comparing it, but was really a good review for that. Then you examine the language carefully, the structure, how they write the thing, how they describe the characters, what is revealed in a movie review. How does the Twilight Saga differ from the other 2? You can compare them as well. Having read the reviews, are you still convinced that you would like to watch the movie of your choice? You might say, well, no, I'm not actually going to watch that Twilight Saga. I don't like gory movies, okay? You can give reasons for your answer. And then your application is an individual. You go and choose your own movie or something from Netflix that you've watched, and then you write your own review on it. So there's a whole lot of writing happening here, using sentence structures, analyzing words, seeing opinion coming through, seeing facts coming through. And this is a nice way to practice language in groups and individually. Okay, we're getting on to CLA, critical language awareness, which has also come up in social discourse in assignment 1. Remember that language evaluates issues and it shows a lot of power. It can destroy, it can harm, it can inspire, it can comfort, It can energize you, but it can also be that very demotivating factor in your life. So that's the power of the tongue, okay? It evaluates issues of equality and inequality, social justice and injustice, identity, and it can break identity and it can build up identity. And if you think about this lovely little visual, language is a superpower. So the fact that you've got language is that you can do so much with it to harm with negative things or to build up and encourage and inspire people. Let's keep it to the inspiring part. So you want to enhance acquisition with your students, especially they can be critical readers and they can read things and not just take anything at face value, but they will actually analyze the way words are used, how the negative words are used, how the positive words are used, how punctuation is used. Well, there's lots of exclamation marks or there are lots of question marks. Why? Those are things that must be critical of. If you go to the CAPS document, there's a whole list of things that you can look out for with CLA from facts and opinions. And these are things you can also use with your social discourse. If the whole thing is on opinion or the whole thing is written on fact, what is the effect on the message? Denotation and connotation, the effect of selecting certain words and omitting other words, maybe writing it all from a negative perspective and not from a positive perspective. What about the use of language to manipulate, prejudice, stereotype, making assumptions, arguments, including the use of pronouns for that, I, me, we, us, they, and also the visual literacy, which is now also part of assignment 1. Okay. This is quite a nice way of looking at a critical thinking model, and we're going to look at Ramaphos' speech just now. But first of all, if you are trying to be critical, how you can actually generate this model and use it nicely and practically in your class. So you've got your topic or your issue, which might just be bullying. Let's just keep it at that. Then you can describe the bullying. What was the bullying? When did it happen? Who did it happen with? Where did it happen? Okay, so that's all the description part. Then you can go on to the analysis part. Why did the bullying happen? How did it happen? All right. Then you're going to go on to the evaluation at the end. What if the teacher stopped it? What if the parent was told? Okay, so what happened to the boy? What happened to the bully? What's going to happen now in the school? So this is where you can have a nice model to be a critical description of something, analysis. I'm going to look at word clouds now, www.wordcloud.com, which is very much the same as Menti. What I did last year was I just downloaded this speech from Ramaphos. I think it was also about July last year. And there he is, when he took us all out of hard lockdown and he lifted the cigarette and the alcohol bans. And I pasted his whole speech into a word cloud. And you can see all the big words are the words that we use all the time. There's South Africa, there's holiday, there's COVID-19, there's lockdown, the big words. Then I did the same thing today. I went to the presidency and I went and looked at his speech to the family after he visited eThekwini and all the recent violence and deployment of security forces there. Copied his speech and I pasted into wordcloud.com, which is really quite fun. You know, you can do different shapes. This was the Africa shape, and you can see will was the most common word used. And I think that was all the things that we're going to do. We will do. We've still got to wait and see. But you can see there's also violence is there, businesses, because it affected a lot of businesses. Then also have the whole thing was you also spoke about the pandemic with vaccinations, and then you've got vaccines. Then you've got rebuild, obviously the companies, the need we have, Africans, centers, government, payment, all the smaller words. But with this, you can actually see what is actually going on and what he's stressing in his actual speech. And it's quite nice to unpack it. The one from the word repetitions from the lockdown, stopping, the banning it, the bigger words was from South Africa to gyms, alcohol, and cans. And the smaller words were from unemployed, cigarettes, pandemic, surge, flattens, bans, midnight. You can see all the words that were important in that speech. So it's also one way to see what words are being used is to paste them into a word cloud, and you can see what is focused on in that. And it's quite a fun thing for students to do because they can make different shapes. They can even take their own work and go and paste it in and see what actually happens with that. Okay. Right, quickly looking at grammar games. This is quite a nice way you can build up sentences, the same way as you did with adjectives and the descriptive sentences just now. We can just take any ARP sentence like this one they've got here. We stood outside for 20 minutes. Just by the way, it's all from Pinterest. You get great ideas on resources there. We stood outside for 20 minutes, and you can say, add an adjective, which links with our previous exercise. We stood outside for 20 miserable minutes, okay? Then you say, when did we stand outside? And you repeat the whole thing. This morning. Where did we stand? On the sidewalk in front of the school. How did we stand? We stood there shivering. So you're adding in your how and why. And that's the pink part at the bottom. Is quite fun to do. The special students like to use colors. This morning, we stood shivering on a snow-covered sidewalk in front of the school for 20 miserable minutes while the fire chief investigated the cause of the fire alarm. Okay, there's a lovely long sentence that they've had to put together using all those prompts. Here's a hook to get people reading your work that you can actually teach these to your students. Start with a question. Who left tiny footprints in my bedroom? What about sound? Ring. It was 2:55 and the school bell rang. Okay, we're getting out of school. What about an exclamation mark? Oh no, I forgot my book bag on the school bus again. And what about repetition? Yes, yes, yes. I finally got an A in maths. So you can share this all with them, and you can say, today you're going to start your essay using an exclamation or an adjective or a repetition, and encourage them to become knowledgeable and aware of different ways they can hook their readers or their listeners as well to what they are doing. This is quite nice. Weeks of school, which are different days that you can do different things. On Monday, you can look at mistakes. You give them a piece of writing which is being corrected and how they can fix it up. Tuesday, they might look at terms. You've got two words. I think the one's accentuate, the other one's bombard, and they use this in sentences and they write it in their little vocab books. Wednesday could be looking at wise words, and they can bring wise words themselves. What Shakespeare said, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Now let's discuss what he said there. Thursday are thoughts, different things that we think about different things. What age do you consider to be old? Okay. You might think that 25 is old if you're only 18. Do you think age is just a number? Okay, if you're maybe older, you maybe think it is just a number, but if you're younger, you maybe don't want it to be a number. Then figurative expressions for Friday. Let's look at personification, and let's look at similes. Okay, and you can hand these all out and talk about these things in class, and even ask the students to bring different things on different days. This is quite a fun game. I think you can also do the social distancing in class. It's the grammar game, but just need a dice. If you throw a 1, you can have to list 3 coordinating conjunctions. If you throw a 3, make up a sentence that uses 2 prepositional phrases and identify them. And then you've got a whole lot of combinations that you can go through and make a little game of learning grammar rules. This is a conversational piece that you could have. Where you put fish or any kinds of pieces of paper in a bowl and must pick it out and speak about it. For instance, number 9 is, what's your favorite part about summer? Okay. Number 5, name someone in your life who always teaches you things. I mean, what do they teach you? So those are ways you get people talking, even in groups. They don't speak to the whole class. This is quite fun for maybe a grade 8 with throwing balls, which could be quite dangerous in the class, but you could go outside and do it. Quick thinking. Teacher throws the ball at Tando and she says, Tando, and she throws the ball at him and he must add a verb to it. Tando catches the ball and answers, Tando runs or sleeps. Okay, so using the right concord with the right name. Then he throws it to his friend and he says they must use the word they. So the friend will say, classmate catches the ball and says they speak, they learn, not they learns or they speaks. Okay, so this is the way they learn how to use the different constructions. But then you can add complexity maybe with grades 10 to 12, where you can add in an adjective. Beautiful Tando throws the big ball. Okay, so you could add all your adjectives in, add more nouns, add adverbs. How does he throw the ball? How does he run? How does he sleep? Okay, soundly. This is verb agreement to subject still, where you give little cards and it says here, my dad and I don't like bowling. My dad and I doesn't like bowling. So you've got to choose which one is correct and then you can actually move in the game. So these might be fun grammar games. This one is Prefix Game. You've got terminate, and you've got different prefixes, and you've got to join the word to the prefix, like exterminate. So you'd have to find the word that will go with that. First one finishes is the winner. Okay. This is one different one, quite a weird one. It's called the noun basketball. They've got different nouns there, like author, pillow, kitchen, dog, and you've got common noun, not a noun, proper noun, and they've got to throw the ball into the different net. You could have different varieties to do this if you've got time and fun and you would like to do something like that. Okay, the last, I think it's the second last one, getting to know people, asking questions. The teacher pins a name of a famous person. It could be a sports person, it could be an actor, it could be someone on the, maybe someone even in the class on the back of the learner. I watch Idols, so I quite like Miley Cyrus, is Nick Jonas, Kelly Clarkson, we've got there, we go back, yes, John Legend, and we've got Blake Sheldon with Gwen Stefani, he's Beyonce, I think it is now. So you put it on, then the learners have to ask their peers questions without asking directly. Does the person play sport? Is he a scholar? Was she a scholar? What type of music do they like? So you try and probe a lot of questions until you can actually work out who the person is on your back, and that forces you to ask questions. The names are not revealed until everyone has come to a conclusion about what it is, and then they're given a chance to reveal who they think they really are. Okay, they might say they are John Legend and it's somebody else completely. Okay, this is a tense activity to predict. Each group has a picture with some kind of action on it, man running, child crying, people chatting, whatever it might be. And here you can see all these action shots. Looks like bungee jumping, some kind of protest. Yeah, they're relaxing. And the teacher writes on the board what happens next. We did a bit of this in week 2 as well, how you can use these pictures and say what happens next. Then the group discuss it and express suggestions. You can also answer using words like what happened next, yesterday, what happened this morning, will happen, after this happened, we had, whatever it might be, my past perfect. From 2 p.m. they will, which is a future tense, tomorrow they will. So you can actually use these little prompts to extend on what happened next, get in these little half-completed sentences and let them complete it with the tense. Practicing. Here we go, tenses. Okay, this is coming to the question and answer forum again. We did one last semester. This is based on CLT teaching practices, and this is going to be your online tracking due on the 5th of September. Remember, you've got to wait 30 minutes before you can answer someone's question because it's not going to review it until yours has been posted. So you have to write again 50 words on your post, and you've got to respond to 2 other students' posts of at least 25 words a post. You did very well at this last semester. I know I didn't put marks in, but I read most of them and I was very impressed with many of the responses. I'm going to see if I can find the time now to mark them as well this semester. Okay, so CLT question examples, you'll have one question, and each of the courses have got different questions. So you're not going to have the same question if you are home language FET or home language SP. You'll have different questions that you need to answer. And you have the same introduction in each of your questions. Of course, grammar, pronunciation, and vocab are necessary for effective communication. With the communicative language teaching method, 2 primary approaches might be taken. First, you teach the grammar rule, all right? Other one, you discover the grammar rule. So those are the 2 ways, and we discuss that they're both acceptable as long as there's application as well. And then you've got 4 questions. Each of the different courses have got a different question which they need to answer. For instance, number 3 says, why do CLT approaches focus on language fluency rather than on accuracy? And you must try and explain that in your answer. Then you're going to comment on what 2 other people say as well. Okay, that brings me to the end of tonight's learning event. Activities and resources. You can use some of these ideas if you want to in your assignments. Just remember that everything is available to you if you practice it on authentic materials. You don't need to have a format for it. You can just grab anything out of everything. Okay, so let's just look at this little cartoon at the end. It's looking at tenses. Mom Me and Lawrence was going. She says, Lawrence and I were going. Remember, it's two of you. Yeah, well, anyway, we seen. We saw, she corrects, past tense. Well, you know them guys who? Those guys. What's your speech, Michael? Now, what were you going to tell me, Mom says? And she says, I forgot. Okay. So if we nail students for errors all the time, they might feel just like that. So just remember, you've got to be creative. Fluency is important. Meaning is important. And practice is important. Okay. That's why we love English. I'm sure some of you are not too happy about English, but it's a great language to teach. It's great creativity in the classroom, and you can do so much with it. So I'm wishing you happy teaching. Happy learning, and we'll chat in the week again. Okay, you take care, stay warm, stay safe, and let's get going. Okay, let's do this. Bye for now. I'm going to stop my share.